General alert. You might be wasting money on omega-3. Discover the truth. Seriously, who here hasn't heard that omega-3 is the 8th wonder of the world? That it's great for the heart, the brain, diabetes, everything? I bet you've bought into this talk or are thinking about buying that expensive bottle of fish oil, right? But what if I told you the story behind all this hype is way more complicated, and that maybe you're being duped? Hold on, because today we're going to unravel the origin of this omega-3 craze and expose what they don't tell you. Ready to have your certainties shaken? If you like the boldness, smash that like button to give us some support. What's up, folks? Metabolic greetings. I'm Dr. Anonymous, an endocrinologist, and you're on the main channel dedicated to helping you turn the tables on type 2 diabetes. Our mission here is ambitious. We want to help thousands of people like you reverse this condition, achieving better health with fewer medications. And I want to know, do you want to be part of this group that's changing their own story? If the answer is yes, besides following our content, help me spread this information. Recommend the channel to your family, friends, coworkers. There's no shortage of people out there needing this insight, diabetics and pre-diabetics who can change their lives with knowledge. There are probably tens of millions of people in this situation. Let's make a difference. Today, the topic is one of the most famous supplements with the strongest marketing push I see out there, the so-called omega-3. Everyone seems to love the idea of taking these golden capsules. Hardly anyone can really explain what it is, where it comes from, how it works, but the appeal is huge. Take it, it's good for you. Is it really? Let's get down to it. No fluff and no medical jargon. Omega-3 is basically a technical name for a tau-specific type of fat. It comes from its chemical structure in biochemistry. A boring part, I'll spare you. What's important to know is that there are other omegas, like omega-6 and omega-9, which are also fats, but with slightly different structures. Omega-3. Famous for fish oil. Omega-6. Very common in modern seed oils, soybean, corn, sunflower. Omega-9. Abundant in olive oil and, wait for it, lard. They don't tell you that part, right? Keep this info about the types of omegas in mind. It'll be important later. But where does the famous omega-3 found in supplements come from? The primary source of this type of fat in nature is marine algae. They are the ones that produce omega-3. Then, who eats the algae? Tiny little fish, krill, tiny crabs. Next, who eats these small critters? Slightly larger fish, seals, other marine animals. And who eats these medium fish? Even bigger fish. It's the food chain. Omega-3 accumulates up this pyramid. At the top, we have the large marine predators, big fatty fish like deep-water salmon, tuna, and also mammals like seals and whales. They eat a ton of smaller creatures and end up concentrating a large amount of omega-3 in their body fat. And then, at the top of this chain, at least the one relevant to us, comes the human being. When humans hunt and eat these large fatty fish, or seals, or whales, as some traditional cultures do, they are consuming all that omega-3 accumulated from the algae at the base. This is the biological origin of the omega-3 that ends up in capsules. The Inuit story and the dubious conclusion. Now, how did this omega-3 story become such a craze? It all started way back, maybe in the 60s or 70s, with some Danish researchers. They were from Northern Europe, near the North Pole. They decided to venture into their backyard, which was basically the Arctic, to study a fascinating people, the famous Eskimos. By the way, a side note, the term Eskimo is considered offensive by them. The correct name they use for themselves is Inuit. But I'll use both here to make identification easier, okay? What did these Inuit people traditionally eat? My friend, They ate whatever was available in that frozen environment. At 40 degrees F, with snow and ice everywhere, whatever moved became lunch. Their diet was based on hunting. Whale, seal, fatty cold water fish, walrus. What did they not eat? Exactly what you're thinking. No salads, no tomatoes, no whole grains, no bread, no oatmeal porridge. It was an almost 100% carnivorous wool diet based on protein and especially lots of animal fat. Culturally, they even preferred the organ meats and fattiest parts of the animals, disdaining lean meat. They even had a preservation trick similar to what your grandma might use with preserved pork. They'd kill a fatty animal, a seal for example, process the fat, and store pieces of meat immersed in this fat. In that freezing climate, it was a natural refrigerator, and the food lasted for years if needed. The big difference is that our farm pig has very little omega-3, but the seal's diet, rich in fish, made its fat loaded with omega-3. When the Danish researchers analyzed the health of these Inuit people who lived in isolation, in an incredibly harsh life, intense physical labor as hunters, frequent starvation, walking miles on ice to find food. Far from modern civilization, they noticed something striking. The Inuit had extremely low incidences of the modern diseases that were already plaguing Europe and North America at the time. Diabetes was almost non-existent among them. Cancer was extremely rare. Heart attacks were very few. All those diseases we've come to see as normal parts of aging here were almost absent there. This caught a lot of attention. The curious, and here's where the problem starts, part is that the researchers, perhaps eager to find a silver bullet, a single simple explanation for the Inuits' health, focused on one thing, the diet rich in marine animal fat, and they concluded, aha, the Inuit are healthier because their diet is super rich in omega-3, and our modern diet is not. Seriously, folks, look at the number of things totally different in their lifestyle compared to ours. Diet with no sugar, no flour, no processed vegetable oils. Intense and constant physical activity, hunting, walking on ice. Absence of modern chronic stress. Strong sense of community and communal living. Exposure to extreme cold. Frequent, involuntary fasting. Absence of modern pollution and toxins. They ignored all of that and chose only omega-3 as the miracle factor. Come on, that's a very simplistic, almost naive explanation, right? Sure, they could measure omega-3 in their blood and see it was high. It was something quantifiable, unlike sense of community. But to attribute all their health solely to that, it was quite a forced logical leap. But it was this conclusion, however flawed, that kicked off decades of research focused on the benefits of omega-3 and fueled the gigantic fish oil supplement industry we have today. So much so that if someone asks you the main source of omega-3, what do you say? Fish oil. But not just any fish. It would have to be that wild fish, caught way up in the cold, deep waters of the Arctic, that ate other fish that ate other little critters that ate the algae. That fish with a thick layer of fat where the omega-3 accumulated. Understand the saga of this stuff now? Omega-3 versus omega-6. The battle of the fats. Over time, research, much of it done in vitro, meaning in labs, dripping fat droplets onto cells, which is very different from the real human body, began to notice some interesting biochemical characteristics of omega-3s, especially when compared to another type of polyunsaturated fat, omega-6. They found that, generally, omega-6s, abundant in seed oils like soybean, corn, sunflower, canola, tend to have a more pro-inflammatory and pro-clotting effect, activating blood platelets more in the body. Omega-3s. From fatty fish, flaxseed, chia seeds, seemed to have the opposite effect, or at least did not promote these processes of inflammation and clotting. This became the first major biochemical explanation for why omega-3 oils were good and omega-6s were bad, a simplification, of course. And since chronic low-grade inflammation and clotting problems are at the root of many modern diseases, cardiovascular, autoimmune, etc., the recommendation became consume more omega-3 and less omega-6. The modern imbalance and the crucial question. And here we get to the crux of the matter. What is the main source of fat in the modern Western diet? Precisely the refined vegetable oils rich in omega-6. Soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, canola oil. They are in almost everything processed, in all fast food, used for frying, in margarines, ready-made sauces, crackers, chips. Our modern diet is generally low in omega-3 because we eat little wild fatty fish and while loaded with omega-6. Additionally, it's often low in saturated and monounsaturated fats, omega-9 from natural sources like meat, eggs, lard, butter, and olive oil, because we were taught to fear these bad fats. The result is a drastic imbalance in the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in our diet, something our ancestors, like the Inuit or the traditional farmer, never experienced. Faced with this, an interesting alternative hypothesis emerged, defended by some researchers. What if the main problem isn't the lack of omega-3 in the modern diet, but rather the absurd excess of omega-6? What if instead of desperately focusing on supplementing omega-3, the most effective and natural strategy was simply to drastically reduce the consumption of omega-6? How do you do that? Well, there's no magic. You'd have to get out of the supermarket aisles. My friend, stop buying packaged goods, frozen ready meals, cookies, margarine, refined seed oils. You'd have to uninstall the food delivery apps and go back to cooking with real food, using more natural fats like olive oil, butter, lard, coconut oil. Can you handle that? Are you up for the challenge? Or are you going to find it easier to keep eating the same stuff and just add a fish oil capsule a day, paying a small fortune, $30, $50 a month, sometimes more, for a bottle? The unpleasant surprise in the capsules. If you chose the second option, the capsule, I have some rather unappetizing news for you. There are several serious scientific studies, not just one or two, several, that did the following. They went unannounced into large pharmacies and supplement stores in the US and other countries, bought various bottles of omega-3 from famous brands right off the shelf, and took them to the lab for analysis. The result was shocking. A huge percentage of the capsules contained spoiled, oxidized, rancid oil. Why? Because omega-3 is a type of polyunsaturated fat that is very sensitive, very unstable. It spoils, oxidizes, very easily with exposure to light, oxygen in the air, and temperature changes. Think about the process. The oil is extracted from the fish, who knows how and when, transported, encapsulated, packaged, transported again, sits on the store shelf for months, getting light, heat, until it reaches your hand. Imagine the conditions here in the US, with varying climates and storage conditions not always ideal. The chance that you are buying and taking spoiled, oxidized fish oil, which has not only lost its supposed benefits but might even be harmful, is enormous. It's not me saying this. It's published studies. I just bring you the good news so you can think. Back to reality. The whole lifestyle. There's yet another chapter to this story, involving studies with specific purified forms of omega-3, sometimes even as prescription drugs, trying to reduce cardiovascular complications in high-risk patients. But that's a different conversation. What I want you to take away today is this. 1. The omega-3 fame story started with an interesting observation, the Inuit, but likely a simplistic and flawed conclusion, ignoring all other lifestyle factors. 2. The biochemical difference between omega-3 and omega-6 exists, but the real impact in the complex human body is still debated. 3. The major problem of the modern diet might be the excess of omega-6, seed oils, more than the lack of omega-3. Reducing the former might be more important than supplementing the latter. 4. The quality and stability of omega-3 supplements available on the market are highly questionable. And, most importantly, does it really make sense to isolate one nutrient, omega-3, and think it's the magic key to health, ignoring everything else about lifestyle? Think again about the Inuit. They weren't healthy only because they ate fatty fish. Go live in an igloo at some 40 degrees without Netflix, having to walk 12 miles in the snow to hunt dinner, occasionally starving, living in a tight-knit community without the stress of traffic jams or bills to pay. Doesn't all that provide physical and mental health benefits? Of course it does. Do you know the traditional farmer in your region? That lean, strong 90-year-old guy who still works with a hoe every day and is much healthier than many 30 or 40-year-olds today? If a researcher studied this guy, they might find he also doesn't have diabetes, cancer, or Alzheimer's. And then they'd look at his diet, eats preserved pork, saturated and monounsaturated fat, maybe has a little moonshine now and then instead of Mediterranean red wine, uses lard for cooking every day, rich in omega-9, and does hard physical labor his whole life. Where's the miracle omega-3? And guess what? It works just as well as the Inuit or Mediterranean diet. Did you get the message? Health is much more complex than focusing on a single savior nutrient. Comment below what you thought of this whole story. Had you ever stopped to think about this? Did you understand the difference between the omegas and the problem with supplements? And tell me, am I choosing the right topics here for the channel? Your opinion matters. Hope to see you here in the next video, huh? Oh, and subscribe. So you don't miss it, explore the old videos. There's lots of good content. And turn on notifications. If you want to support our work, consider becoming a member. See you next time. Bye-bye.